Hey kids, welcome back to another episode of Oldman Plays CFL Fantasy and Pick 'em. I remain, as always, your 100% impartial, completely unbiased host and presenter, Oldman shouting at clouds. So let's get on to this again. Slightly new format this week, it was new last week, but this is what we're going with. Just going to talk through this stuff, give you my reasons for who I'm going with or where I might go with fantasy, and then who I actually picked, and kind of the same thing in the CFL Pick 'em. If you watched my quick little Old Man Play CFL Pick 'em in under a minute already, you know who my picks are. This will tell you a bit of the reasons why. First, let's talk about last week. I did not too bad. Fantasy, I got 104.9. I got hurt by taking the Lions. I've been trying to avoid that, but I felt like they had a chance. So I took McInnes as one of my wide receivers and Stanback as a running back, figuring, of course, against Calgary, he'll put up huge yards. And I even made him my captain. So I doubled the points, and I think I got like 17.8 doubling, and McInnes got less than 10. But my other picks, basically, I had Brady, who really went off and got me good points. Should have made him the captain. But I didn't. He went off, and so did my four from Saskatchewan. The D, Harris, Johnson, and Hickson, because I needed someone cheap at the flex. Now, in Pick'em, I went 2-1, because I overestimated the Tabbies. I thought they were playing really well, and they have been, but not well enough to beat Winnipeg. You know, history, the way that they beat them there in Hamilton the last few years, the way they played them in Winnipeg, I thought it was going to be a closer game than it was, and I was wrong. So I'm not going to be betting against Winnipeg for a while here. Other than that, even though the first two games weren't terribly exciting, they kind of made up for it between Edmonton and Saskatchewan, and I'm happy with that. I believe I'm left now at 45-25 or 43-25-2, depending on the scoring system you use. So let's start with the fantasy. This is a hard week to pick because I like to try and get mine in by Thursday so I can tell you folks what's going on and, you know, also know that I'm locked in. But there's really only one depth chart out so far because Toronto's out. Winnipeg, for some reason, I can never get them until after the game's over. And the other games are 2 on Saturday and 1 on Monday. So I may have to make some changes once I see what the depth charts are. In that first game, Toronto and Winnipeg, both of them, I don't think I'm taking anyone in fantasy. Toronto, they're up against that Winnipeg defense. I think the crowd's going to get on the Chad and really rattle him. He's been terrible on the road and adequate at home. So I don't expect a lot out of that. And then plus, Winnipeg has a reasonably good run defense, and I don't think that the Argos are going to be able to use Carey as much as they like to. Who knows where it'll go? Too much uncertainty. And frankly, the same thing with Winnipeg, because I'm sure they're going to win this game, but mostly by defense maybe. And Zach may have a fantastic game, or he may have one of his duds again. You never know. And if he has a dud, then who do you pick? So the only one might be Brady, and again, he did good last week, but Toronto's got the best run defense in the CFL right now, statistically at least, so I think I'm going to try and stay away from him. You know, so that takes us to the Edmonton and Calgary game. Well, Edmonton maybe Trey and pair him up with Gino at a quarterback. I thought about that. Whoever their starting running back is, Calgary, despite what they did against BC last week, has not got a good run defense, so I think that might be a good start. Calgary, maybe Bagleton. He's the only one I can think of. He usually gets some consistent yards, but at this point I don't even know who's playing quarterback there, so I'm staying away from that. I do notice on the injury reports that both Hyman and Eccles are not participating in practice. Don't know if they'll be back in or not. I think Eccles is definitely out. Don't know about Hyman. So just be careful about that if you're picking. Lions and the Riders. The Lions, do you get good Nathan or bad Nathan? I considered Nathan last week and had some comments that maybe I should have been looking at him. He is good, but then he's not. And I don't have the faith in it. And like I said, Stanback, he done well, but after what happened last week, and now he's going against Saskatchewan, which may not be the best statistical run defense in the league, but they're actually up there, I think, in actual run defense. The Riders' run statistics got hurt by that 200-plus yard game against Edmonton, but other than that, they've been shut down. So hard to go with Stanback. Now, on the Riders, though, I think that they can do well against that BC defense. Yes, BC's defense did score twice last week, but that was a fluke, and that's not going to happen again. So possibly Harris, possibly Johnson teamed up together. AJ or Armstead, if either of them are playing. But if I go that way, I don't think I'll look at any other receivers. I try not to load up too much on any one team. Johnson, I say, because he's been lights out lately. Been scoring very well, and Trevor's been playing great. So, anyway, who else? The last game of the week, Als and the Red Blacks. Well, Cody maybe, but he's been iffy lately too. Speaker's been not getting huge targets, but good yards when he gets the targets. So maybe Fletcher against the Red Blacks with their linebackers all banged up and on backups and whatnot. And in the Red Blacks, probably Hardy, because no matter who's quarterbacking, he seems to get consistent yards and targets. Maybe Lamorne, because Montreal's run defense is the one weak part of that. But the problem with that is if Montreal gets a lead up, he may not see that many carries. So those were the players I was basically considering. Once I started punching the numbers in and seeing what I could do, I've gone with the Saskatchewan D, Harris as quarterback and captain, Ouellette and Leak at running back, Johnson and Hardy at wide receivers. And I broke my own rule about not picking bombers and decided I'll take a chance on Lawler. He's not that expensive. Put him in at the flex, and if anybody's going to do anything for them, it's a good chance it's him. So that left me with 2.3K left over. Now, I specifically took Ouellette and Leak because they're both high-priced running backs. Ouellette still shows as injured, and so does Armstead. But I'll try to take whichever one of those comes in. If Leak is not starting, then I'll go over to Rankin, and I can do that because in all those cases they're cheaper. And if I don't go with anybody out of Saskatchewan, I'm not sure. I may go back to Lamorne with Ottawa then, but I got to see depth charts, so there may be some changes. When we go to the Pick'em, some of it's easier, some's not so much. We start tomorrow night, Friday night, with Toronto in Winnipeg. And Toronto's fighting for a playoff spot. They could still get knocked out. They have to lose all their last 3 games. They got the Elk and they got Montreal after this, but I believe those are both away games, and they're not good away, so could be. And if Hamilton keeps winning. So Toronto will be motivated. But Winnipeg, I don't think you can pick against them now, the way that they've been playing lately. It come true that the Winnipeg offense is held in check by that Toronto D. But I don't think that they'll do it as well as Winnipeg will do to Toronto. And as I said in the fantasy segment, I think the Chad's going to get really rattled because Winnipeg can't wait to get on his nerves, and it's showing all the away games so far. It can do that. The only place he didn't really suffer from that was out in BC, where they were really too polite to say the things they should have to him. Okay. So Winnipeg is on my pick on that one. The next game is Saturday, Edmonton at Calgary. Again, hard to say because they're both out of the playoffs. Who are they going to play? How will the players react? Who's going to have jump in their step still trying to get jobs, and who's just shutting it down? I don't know. We have heard that Edmonton is starting Trey, and he may do well. Calgary last year spied him with Judge and contained him fairly effectively, so who's learned from that more? It's too tough to know. And frankly, Dickinson is a better coach than Jackson. So with all that going for it, you'd think I'd be all over Calgary. But sometimes with Pick'em, you got to go with your gut, and my gut says Edmonton. I just think they're the better team right now, and I don't think that they will fold up the tents. So Edmonton on that game. Next game, also on Saturday, BC at Saskatchewan. Another one that's tough to pick because Saskatchewan's been consistent. They played well right through even their losing streak. And most of the games were close. They've rarely been out of games. Whereas with BC, you just don't know. Will it be good Nathan and the Lions that show up or bad? Will it be the ones that, beat up Montreal, or will it be the one that's been beat up by Winnipeg and Hamilton and Toronto and everybody else? It makes it really difficult to say. If the best version of BC shows up, they may win this. But if I'm going with what's safest, the team that's played consistently the best is Saskatchewan. Saskatchewan is also at home. They're on a roll. They're feeling good. Whereas BC, I feel like, is feeling like they were lucky to beat Calgary. So, no offensive touchdowns in that game for BC. So if they can't score on the Calgary defense, so I'm going Saskatchewan. And I feel good about that one. But like I said, there's an iffy part in there. And so the last one we go to is Monday, Ottawa at Montreal. And that far out, who knows what's going on? I understand Mazzoli's been taking the first team reps for Ottawa. And the Montreal O has struggled lately. Now they're coming up against Ottawa. It's in Montreal, where Montreal blew them out earlier when they had their full team with Ottawa. Ottawa has now got down, I think they're still down all three of their starting linebackers. I don't think any of them have come back in. Harris might have, but still it's going to be a tall order there. And as much as Ottawa wants to try and clinch that second place, I don't think they do it on this game. So I'm going Montreal. All right, so that's it. For whatever it's worth, those are my picks. I'll go through them again if you weren't paying attention at the right point. In the end, I'm going with Saskatchewan's defense, Harris at quarterback and making him my captain, Ouellette and Leak at running backs, Johnson and Hardy at wide receivers, and Lawler at the flex, which leaves me 2.3K. My pick'ems are going to be Winnipeg, Edmonton, Saskatchewan, and Montreal. That's it. Those are my picks. If you'd care to steal any of them, do so at your peril. Hope this did you some good. Wishing you a great weekend of CFL football. Lots of luck with your fantasy and pick'em teams. And please, before you get out of here, remember to subscribe. There's a nice little button right over there. Share it with your friends, your enemies, casual acquaintances. I don't care. Just let lots of people know that it's out here. And leave some comments. And the last one I love, mash that like button. Let me know that you've enjoyed this. All right, that's it for now. Till next week. Get the hell off my lawn.